Hi, I'm Nogal Bell, and I'm the Israelite with Tov Channel News, bringing you unfiltered truth, news, and analysis from Israel. The war in Gaza has been distracting us from many other challenges to Israeli security in recent years. In fact, for the past 3 years, we've been seeing a growing rate of terror attacks coming out of Judea and Samaria from areas that the Palestinian Authority is supposed to be responsible for. In the graph that you will see in a second, you can see that around summer of 22, what we're seeing isn't necessarily an increase in attacks, but rather an increase in their efficacy. The blue line that you see is a line of Israelis who were either injured or killed as a result of these terror attacks. And the gray area behind it is administrative detentions, which in Israel we use in order to try to prevent attacks from happening in the first place. And what you can see is that while we've increased the number of people detained tenfold, we've done nothing to mitigate the actual problem, which is that more Israeli civilians are being killed by terrorists. Since the beginning of 24 alone, 186 injured and 21 died in Jerusalem, Tel Aviv, and Judea and Samaria. More than 2/3 of those are civilians hurt by terror attacks. In the last month alone, we saw a few incidents, one of them just this morning, of car bombing. So there are growing concerns in Israel that we are in fact looking at the beginnings, or rather the middle, of a third Intifada. I am joined now by senior Middle East analyst Yoni Ben Melachem to discuss those concerns. Yoni, are we looking at a new Intifada?
This is definitely possible. Of course, we're talking about Judea and Samaria. What is concerning is that since August 19th, when there was an explosion in Tel Aviv carried out by a terrorist from Hamas, from Nablus, who carried a bomb with him and was planning to make a suicide attack, and the bomb exploded in his hands for some technical reasons. Right after this incident, the military wing of Hamas announced officially in a leaflet that they are renewing the phenomena of suicide attacks or suicide bombings inside Israel. Now, this is considered one of the strategic weapons of the Hamas, the suicide bombings, and they used it up till 2003 in the second Intifada. But finally they dropped it because there was a lot of criticism all over the world about this method of killing, and they deserted this idea. Now they're coming back to it. Now the explosion, the bombing in Tel Aviv was very alarming because, and also of course the leaflet officially announcing the resumption of the terrorist attacks, and for what we see since October 19th, until today, we see growing tendency to implement this new policy of suicide bombings. As you mentioned this morning, there was a booby-trapped car parked near Ateret settlement in Judea and Samaria, and it was diffused. Luckily, nothing happened. It was a miracle. 2 days ago, there were 2 attacks by booby-trapped car, one in Gush Etzion gas station, the other one in Karmet Sur settlement, and luckily only 3 people got injured slightly, but thanks to the military and the people in the settlement of Karmet Sur, a big attack was prevented. So from what I understand, from talking to activists in Hamas and also from talking to the Shin Bet, this is a growing concern in the Israeli military, in the Israeli Shin Bet, and I think that we are going to see increasing these activities very soon. This is why the IDF is not waiting and is diverting forces, big forces, big reinforcements to be brought into the area of Hebron, to the area of Bethlehem, because apparently Hamas and the Islamic Jihad are trying to open a new front in the south of Judea and Samaria, in Judea area, in order to ease the Israeli pressure on Jenin and on Tulkarem. As you know, 5 days ago, the IDF started a big operation called the summer camps in the north of Samaria, on the strongholds of Hamas and Islamic Jihad in Jenin, Tulkarem, Nablus. All this area is full of terrorists. According to the estimation of the IDF, we're talking about between 800 and to 2,000 to 1,000 armed terrorists, and the operation still goes on. But now they're trying to ease the Israeli pressure on these towns, Jenin and Tulkarem, by opening a new front against Israel in Judea area, in Hebron area, and in Bethlehem area.
Yoni, is Hamas not concerned about public opinion anymore? I mean, so far this method has not yielded a lot of results. Not a lot of people have been hurt. But should this continue any further, isn't Hamas worried about losing international support?
Well, they say that they don't have anything to lose anymore as far as public opinion is concerned, because, you know, their image in the world is of a terrorist organization since the massacre, the big massacre that they carried out on October 7th in the settlements in the Jewish communities near Gaza, where they brutally murdered and raped and killed 1,200 Israelis and kidnapped 250 more into Gaza. So their image is already wrecked. So now they're using this what they call the strategic weapons of suicide attacks in order to try and save themselves from the pressure of the Israeli army.
So now that Hamas has embraced their inner terrorists, not that they needed to do that, are we likely to see more effective bombings? And are we likely to see a change in Israeli policy towards them? I mean, are we going to see even more detentions and an attempt to destroy the infrastructure? Or are we going to see a slightly saner approach from the IDF, where they're actually going to try to stop the terrorists from doing what they're doing?
I personally think that we've been very lucky since August 19, when this bomb exploded in Tel Aviv, and there was only one person slightly injured. We were very lucky, but luck does not continue. There's no 100%, and the big question is what will happen if they succeed to carry out a big suicide attack in Tel Aviv, for instance, or in Jerusalem, God forbid, or in Haifa, and many people will be killed, because we remember what happened in the second Intifada. We remember the horrible things that they did to the Israelis in the second Intifada. So I think we've been very lucky. Actually, what we see, this IDF operation in the north of Judea and Samaria, called the summer camps, this is the name of this operation. Actually, it's a preemptive strike on the infrastructure of Hamas and Islamic Jihad in the north of the West Bank, in the north of the Samaria, in order to prevent such attacks inside Israel. So there have been some success for the IDF in these operations. They managed to kill so far about 30 terrorists and find laboratories to manufacture bombs. They arrested like 50 terrorists, and they injured some dozens more. But this is not enough. We have to accelerate the momentum, and we have to take advantage of our success, and we have all the time to chase the terrorists and not to leave them alone. The minute you leave them alone, they will try to make a suicide attack. And we already see that even though there's a military operation going on in the north of Samaria, they're still trying to make terror attacks, like this morning with this booby-trapped car in Ateret. So to change the policy, the IDF has to change the policy. We have to adopt, to take the methods of fighting terrorism like we do in Gaza Strip and implement it inside Judea and Samaria.
Okay, so it's important to understand that IDF incursions into Tulkarem and Jenin are not acts of occupation. They're self-defense against this, terror army. But it begs the question, how has Hamas gotten to be so strong and equipped in the north of Samaria? Whose responsibility is it to make sure that it doesn't become another terror nest, and why are they not doing it?
Right, you ask a very good question. As you know, these areas of Jenin, Tulkarem, Nablus, and the surrounding villages and surrounding refugee camps are all located in what is called Area A. Area A. This is, according to Oslo Agreement, is the responsibility of the Palestinian Authority, of the PA. They are in charge to fight terrorism in these areas and to keep law and order. But what has happened in the last 3 years is that Iran took over north of Samaria, using as proxies, as mercenaries, the Hamas and Islamic Jihad and Fatah and the Popular Front terrorists, recruiting them, putting them on the payroll of Iran. They get big salaries for carrying out terror attacks. Not only that, they provide them with weapons, they provide them with explosives. This is all being smuggled from Iran to the south of Syria, from south of Syria to north of Jordan, and from north of Jordan through the Jordan Valley into the north of Judea and Samaria. So this is the situation is on the ground is now that we have an Iranian terror army in the north of Samaria, and they managed to push away the PA. The PA does not want to fight them, that does not want to have any clashes with them. So they retreated from these areas, and now the Iranian terror army is controlling the north of Samaria. And when you ask the head of the PA, Mahmoud Abbas, Abu Mazen, when the people around him ask him, why don't you fight them? He says this will bring a civil war in the West Bank, in Judea and Samaria, and I don't want that my heritage will be written in Palestinian history is the one who brought a civil war to the Palestinian people. So this is the bottom line.
Bottom line is that the PA that we are supposed to be negotiating a settlement with and trusting them with equipment and weapons that they won't use against us is not willing to use the weapons we gave them in order to enforce the law, and have in fact allowed Iran to create a border directly with Israel in the north of Samaria. Did I get that right?
Yeah, you got that right. This is the big catastrophe of the Oslo Accords, because the assumption was that you can trust the PA, and they promised, of course, Yasser Arafat. At that time, he promised Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin and Shimon Peres, and also Bibi Netanyahu. He promised them that he will fight terrorism and he will do everything to keep the terror away from Israel. And what we're seeing on the ground now is that the Iran managed to establish a terror army in the north of of Samaria, and they are threatening to spread all over the West Bank and all over the Judea and Samaria. And what Mahmoud Abbas doesn't understand that eventually their goal is also to topple the regime of the PA and take over Judea and Samaria like they did in Gaza Strip in 2007. They made a coup d'etat and took over the entire Gaza Strip and threw away the PA. And now they're trying to do that also in Judea and Samaria. But of course, Israel is not going to let that happen because luckily we have the IDF, and the IDF has the overall security in Judea and Samaria. And what the IDF is doing now is trying to prevent this from happening.
So the PA was only given weapons so that they can maintain the peace, and everywhere that they have to do it by themselves, they're absolutely unable to do it. And that is why we have Hamas in Gaza, and we have apparently Iran in north of Samaria.
Don't get it wrong. Don't get it wrong. If they think, the minute they think that Hamas is a real threat to the regime of Abu Mazen, of Mahmoud Abbas, they will fight them. But as long as they're killing Jews, as long as they're killing Israelis and not dealing with the PA, they don't mind. They're not doing anything.
Apparently, so all other forces in the region have a vested interest in killing Jews. And so I understand correctly, the IDF is the only force in the region that can actually ensure a reduction of violence, because all of the other options that we tried seem to be increasing it rather than the other way around.
Exactly. This is a very important conclusion, that the security of Israel must always be in the hands of Israelis, in the hands of the IDF, in the hands of the Shin Bet. You can never trust any Arab to keep the safety and peace of Israelis, because this has been failing all along since.
I think what you're saying is, I think what you're saying is that the security of the Middle East, it rests on the assumption that the IDF maintains the peace here, because if you allow anyone else to do it, you're going to get more violence. The PA isn't willing to enforce anything because they don't want to get into a conflict with all of the other groups around. So if Israel doesn't maintain peace in Israel, what we're going to be seeing is a lot more violence throughout the Middle East.
Look, the Palestinians have been always the source of the problem in the Middle East. This is why they say that we have to solve the issue of the Palestinians. But they don't want to solve the issue of the Palestinians. They want to keep this problem alive. So they will have an excuse always to fight Israel until they succeed in demolishing Israel. This is their way to dream. They don't want to solve the conflict, because there were there were many compromises offered to the Palestinians since the Oslo Accord in 1993, and they rejected all the proposals. For instance, Ehud Barak was willing to withdraw from Judea and Samaria and give them half of Jerusalem, and also divide the Temple Mount. And Yasser Arafat rejected it, and then came Ehud Olmert as prime minister and also offered the same thing, or even more concessions to Mahmoud Abbas, Abu Mazen. He also gave him a map and said, "Here is the map. Sign on it. Sign on this map that you will get most of the territory of Judea and Samaria and East Jerusalem." And Mahmoud Abbas told him, "Yes, yes, I will sign it. Give me the map." He took the map and disappeared. They don't want to solve the problem. They want to dismantle. Absolutely. To destroy the state of Israel.
Yes, well, I think now that we see the increase of violence under the stewardship of the Palestinian Authority all over, I think it's time to realize that another dysfunctional Arab state is not a way to bring more peace into the region. And unless we find a way to get real peace here with people who actually uphold the law rather than use the weapons in order to, I don't know, kick the bucket down and kill more Jews, we are not going to have peace in Israel. Yoni Ben Menachem, thank you so much for being with us. If you like the content, please share and subscribe and stay tuned for more.